Text of study given by V.T. Houteff. Sabbath, August 31, 1946. Mount Carmel Center, Waco, Texas. I shall read the last paragraph from Mount of Blessings, page 150, after which we shall engage in a season of prayer. Mount of Blessings, page 150. If you will seek the Lord and be converted every day, if you will, of your own spiritual choice, be free and joyous in God, if with gladsome consent of heart to His gracious call, you come wearing the yoke of Christ, the yoke of obedience and service, all your murmurings will be stilled, all your difficulties will be removed, all the perplexing problems that now confront you will be solved. What do these words say to us? How often should one become converted? Every day, not once a month, once a year, or once a week, but every day. You can be free and joyous in God daily if you will. Do you now know what makes anyone murmur? What brings difficulties? It is this one thing, the lack of conversion. And if we want to remove our troubles, we should accept the remedy here offered. It is the only remedy. If we hear you murmur, or see you dissatisfied, or that you still continue to have your trials and perplexities, we may know that you have not as yet wholly surrendered to God, that this reading has not profited you. What shall we now pray for? We shall pray for just what the reading calls for. Who will lead us in prayer? Questions and answers. This afternoon, as a week ago last Sabbath, I am to answer some questions that have come to us from the brethren in the Mother Church. You understand that we, too, were once in their place, that we too were once typical Laodiceans, and that what the brethren are doing now, we too were doing then. We were questioning everything in which we had no part. We were acting and speaking in the same way then as they are still. We were about as good or as bad as they. We too blindly believed that we had need of nothing, but that all others had need of us. You know that we were not so open-minded then as we are now either. And when our doctrines were questioned, we too did not honestly and unbiasedly give fair hearing to the views of others. So, looking at it from this angle, we were not much better then than they are at the present time. What makes the difference between us and them is that the light is shining on us, but it is not on them. The credit, then, for what advancement we may have made is not ours, but God's. When we were in their place, we too zealously defended every doctrine, even though we ourselves were not clear in some of them. This we did for no other reason than that they were taught in the church by our own brethren. So we too believed 100% of whatever was taught in the church, regardless where it came from, men or God. It did not matter to us then, as it does not matter to them still. We continued in that state of mind until the scroll unrolled. Then we found that the doctrines which did not come through inspiration were only doctrines of men. The first one of the questions to be answered this afternoon is from the 11th chapter of Daniel. The question is, who is the king of the north, and who is the king of the south in our day? I shall answer this question for the benefit of those who are with us as well as for the benefit of those who are against us. That is, this is to teach us how to answer these questions, so that we can help those who want to know the truth of them. And therefore, it is our duty to sanctify the Lord God in our hearts and be ready to give the right answer to every man that asketh for a reason of the hope that is in us. For the answer on the question that is before us, let us read Daniel 11, verses 40 to 43. And at the time of the end shall the king of the south push at him, and the king of the north shall come against him like a whirlwind, with chariots and with horsemen, with many ships, and he shall enter into the countries, and shall overflow and pass over. He shall enter also into the glorious land, and many countries shall be overthrown, but these shall escape out of his hand, even Edom and Moab, and the chief of the children of Ammon. He shall stretch forth his hand also upon the countries, and the land of Egypt shall not escape. But he shall have power over the treasures of gold and silver, and over all the precious things of Egypt, and the Libyans and the Ethiopians shall be at his steps. At what time was the dispute to occur between the kings? At the time of the end, not in the time of the end. Who was to push at him? The king of the south. Who was to win the war? The king of the north. Yes, and he was to take from the king of the south the countries that are mentioned by name, and many others too. Now, if the war began at the time of the end, then these countries must be ruled by the king of the north in and during the time of the end. Right? Yes. Those who asked the question agree with us that the time of the end is the time of this generation. So we need not bother further about the time of the end in order to answer their question. What we next need to do is to have them tell us which power, now in the time of the end, is ruling the glorious land, Palestine, Egypt, Libya, Moab, and Ammon, and so on. The answer, of course, will be Great Britain. What we next need to ask them is, from whom did she get their lands that are named in the scripture? The answer, of course, will be from Turkey. If so, then they will have answered their own question as to who the king of the north is, and as to who the king of the south is. For a detailed study on the subject, encourage them to read the last part of Tract 12. But do not expect too much of them. You know it is just as hard for them now to acknowledge truth as it was for us when we were in their place. Why? Because it is hard for any human being to say, I was wrong. Only a few are willing to admit their errors, and that is why truth is never popular. So if they cannot be convinced, even when there is no way of dodging the issue, it would not discourage me at all, and I do not see how it would discourage anyone who knows the truth and is zealous for it. If we happen to be the only ones who believe and teach the truth, so much more glory for us if we do stand firm for it. We indeed would be heroes. When the truth came to us, we did not believe in it because others did, but because we ourselves saw the truth. Let us thus continue. Now to the question, who is the king of the south and who is the king of the north in our day? We can confidently answer, saying England is the king of the north because she conquered the lands which the king of the south lost at and during the time of the end. She was the winner, and Turkey was the loser. And England still rules the lands which the scriptures say the king of the south, Turkey, ceded to the king of the north. Now we shall sing a song, and shall then answer another question. Our second question is World War II the last of the wars of Daniel 11? Let us read verse 44. But tidings out of the east and out of the north shall trouble him. Therefore he shall go forth with great fury to destroy, and utterly to make away many. What compels the king of the north to destroy many? Tidings from the east and tidings from the north. That is right. He goes to war because tidings, unpleasant news, reached his ears. Mark carefully that the war of verse 40, according to our previous question and answer, was started by the king of the south and was fought at the time of the end. But the war of verse 44 is started by the king of the north and fought in the time of the end, and not against the king of the south. The war does not start because someone pushes at the king of the north, but because the bad news coming from the east and from the north. Plainly then, these are two different wars. The one of verse 40 to 43 precedes the one of verse 44. Now, as in our first question, we may ask, is it true that England and France declared war against Germany? And for what reason? Was it not because Germany's and Russia's doings in the north divided Poland amongst themselves, and Japan's maneuvering on the east? Did many die in World War II, more than in any other war? If their answers are yes, then they will have again for themselves discovered that World War II is the last war of Daniel 11, that Daniel's prophecy corroborates the incidents that started the war, and it consequently fulfills the prophecy of Daniel 11:44. Now, verse 45. And he shall plant the tabernacles of his palace between the seas in the glorious holy mountain. Yet he shall come to his end, and none shall help him. The statement, he shall come to his end and none shall help him, implies that someone has been helping him. Where are we then in prophecy and in the stream of time? We are between verses 44 and 45. Verses 45 has not yet been fulfilled, and that is all that remains to be filled in Daniel 11. But note that there is no indication made that the war of verse 44 ceases with 44. Moreover, World War II is actually still going on, although Germany and Japan have surrendered. Our next question is, when does the time of the end begin? Let us read Daniel 11, verse 35. And some of them of understanding shall fall to try them, and to purge and to make them white, even to the time of the end, because it is yet for a time appointed. What was to happen to God's people? They were to fall, to be murdered. For what reason? In order to be purged, tried, and made white. How long was this purging to continue? Up to the time of the end. At what time was the king of the south to make war against the king of the north? Verse 40. At the time of the end. What difference is there between the prepositions to and at? No difference. They both meet and end at the same time. Then to find out when the time of the end began, we would have to find out when the martyrdom ceased, and when the empire of the king of the south began to shrink. As far as I am able to find in history, the martyrdom ceased in 1700, and the Turkish Empire began to shrink in 1699. See map 11 of track 12, The World Yesterday, Today, Tomorrow. If these dates bring us to and at the time of the end, then the closing of the 17th century and the beginning of the 18th century, or thereabouts, begins the time of the end. Moreover, speaking of the martyrdom, Jesus said, immediately after the tribulation of those days, the sun shall be darkened. Matthew 24:29-31. The dark day came in 1780 AD, and while the Turkish Empire kept on shrinking, The British kept on expanding. Now to close with, I must tell you something about ourselves as a people. We are aware of the fact that we are giving a great work and that our time is very short. Now I wish to say that these tongues of ourselves are saying things that ought not to be said. Our greatest need, therefore, or one of our greatest needs, is that we learn to control our tongues. Our tongues are given to us for speaking God's truth and His praise. Let us be talking these things and not the people's sins. And if you know that someone is doing something which, according to your best judgment, is not proper for a Christian to do, do not tell it to anyone but to the guilty one, and do not make yourself a criterion for all. Do not force your ideas on anyone but yourselves, providing that your ideas are the Lord's. Leave the people alone. Do not make them your enemies. Understand that they are not in debt to you, neither are they accountable to you for their sins. Who art thou that judgest another man's servant? To his own master he standeth or falleth. Yea, he shall be holden up, for God is able to make him stand. Romans 14:4. Do not make enemies, make friends, and do not have your feelings on your fingertips. If you do, you yourselves are to suffer the pain and the loss of joy. You are to walk the lonely way. Do not misinterpret other people's motives either. Try to see and interpret everything in the right light. See the good in others, and close your eyes to the evil. Let your conversations be on the subject of truth. It will keep you busy talking of something that is profitable and commendable. If you cannot find one to listen to, you can talk to yourself. Think and study. When you talk religion, do not become a bore. Go on with your talk only as far as your audience follows you. Tongues are hard to control, and ears always anxious to hear. It would therefore be better if you do less visiting. Much visiting is only a waste of time. It presents a great temptation to discuss the motes in the eyes of others, thus inviting the mighty power of the evil one to blind your vision to the beam that is in your own eye. Whenever you are by yourself, you can get something done, either working or studying. When you get together with others, the chances are that you get done nothing but harm. Now is the time to study and learn the truth, to find out how to answer people's questions in a simple way without going into a lot of history. Biography without creating confusion to yourself and to others. And if you are determined to be converted every day and to study God's will concerning our duties, not the duties of others, not to delve into other people's business, you will find plenty to do to keep you busy and out of mischief. Remember, too, that you are candidates for the first fruits, to be either one of the 144,000 or one with them. To be that, you must be without guile in your mouth. And if you cannot be such, you will not be anything in the kingdom, but you will be a whole lot in the burning fire. Measure your words with the golden rule. Yes, if you will do to others as you would have them do to you, you will have less trouble, greater joy in life, and many friends all about you.